A very warm welcome to you, dear students, to this module on child psychology. It is semester 1 from the Bachelor of Arts. The course code is PSG 101 and the subject is child psychology. The title of the unit that we will be doing today is Infancy and Toddlerhood, that is Unit 2. And the name of the module is Physical Development, Brain Development. What we'll be studying today is brain development, and it is module number 7. The outline of the lecture, we'll be talking about the patterns of growth, physical development in infancy, brain development, the neuroconstructivistic view, brain physiology, brain development in infancy. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to differentiate between the different patterns of growth, describe the basic structures and function of the brain, compare developmental changes in the brain in infants and toddlerhood. You should also be able to outline physical developmental changes during infancy and toddlerhood. So let's start. Patterns of growth. During prenatal development and early infancy, the head constitutes an extraordinarily large portion of the total body. Gradually, the body's proportions change. Growth is not random. Instead, it generally follows two patterns, the cephalocaudal pattern and the proximo-distal pattern. The cephalocaudal pattern is the sequence in which the fastest growth always occurs at the top of the head. Physical growth in size, weight, and feature differentiation gradually works its way down from the top to the bottom, for example, from neck to shoulders, to middle trunk, and so on. This same pattern occurs in the head area. The top parts of the head, the eyes, the brain grow faster than the lower parts, such as the jaw. Sensory and motor development also generally proceed according to the cephalocaudal principle. For example, infants seize objects before they can control their torso, and they can use their hands long before they can crawl or walk. The next pattern is the proximo-distal pattern. The proximo-distal pattern is the growth sequence that starts at the center of the body and moves towards the extremities. For example, muscle control of the trunk and the arms mature before the control of the hands and fingers. Further, infants use their whole hand as a unit before they can control their fingers. Now, let's look at the physical development that takes place in infancy. Height and weight increase rapidly in infancy. Growth takes a slower course during the childhood years. The average North American newborn is 20 inches long and weighs approximately 7.5 pounds. That is around 3.4 kgs. 95% of full-term newborns are between 18 to 22 inches long and weigh between 5.5 to 10 pounds. 5.5 pounds is approximately 2.5 kgs. In the first several days of life, newborns lose between 5 to 7% of their body weight. Once infants adjust to sucking, swallowing, and digesting, they grow rapidly, gaining an average of 5 to 6 ounces per week. That is approximately 140 to 170 grams per week, and this occurs during the first month. By the time they are 4 months, they have doubled their birth weight and have nearly tripled it by their first birthday. Infants grow about 1 inch per month during the first year, reaching approximately 1.5 times their birth length by their first birthday. In the second year of life, infants' rate of growth slows considerably. By 2 years of age, infants weigh approximately 26 to 22 pounds. That is between 11.7 to 14.5 kgs. Having gained a quarter to half a pound per month during the second year. At age 2, they have reached about 1/5 of their adult weight. The average 2-year-old is 32 to 35 inches tall, which is nearly 1/2 of adult height. However, growth patterns vary individually. Much of the variation is due to heredity, but environmental experiences are involved to some extent. A review of the height and weight of children around the world concluded that 2 important contributors to height differences are ethnic origin and nutrition. Also, urban, middle class, socio-economic status and firstborn children were taller than rural, lower socio-economic status and later born children. The children whose mothers smoked during pregnancy were 1/2 inch shorter than the children whose mothers did not smoke during pregnancy. Now, let's look at the brain, the neuroconstructivistic view. Earlier, scientists thought that our genes determined how our brains were wired, and that the cells in the brain were responsible for processing information, just maturationally unfolded a little or no input from the environmental experiences. This view, however, turned out to be wrong. Instead, the brain has plasticity, and its development depends on context. In the increasingly popular neuroconstructivistic view, you have biological processes, that is the genes, for example, and environmental conditions, that is enriched or impoverished, for example, influence brain development. The brain has plasticity and is context dependent. And finally, development of the brain is closely linked to the child's cognitive development. These factors constrain or advance the child's construction of cognitive skills. The neuroconstructivistic view emphasizes the importance of considering interactions between experience and gene expression in the brain's development. Much in the same way the epigenetic view proposes. Now, let's look at brain physiology. Now, the brain includes a number of major structures. The key components of these structures are neurons. Now, these are nerve cells that handle information processing. The brain has 2 halves or hemispheres. The top portion of the brain, furthest from the spinal cord, is known as the forebrain. Its outer layer of cells, the cerebral cortex, covers it like a cap. The cerebral cortex is responsible for about 80% of the brain's volume and is important in perception, thinking, language, and other functions. Each hemisphere of the cortex has 4 major areas called as lobes. Although the lobes usually work together, each has a somewhat different primary function. The frontal lobe, as you can see from the PowerPoint, is involved in voluntary movement, thinking, personality, and intentionality or purpose. The occipital lobe is involved in the function of vision. The temporal lobe facilitates hearing, language processing, and memory. And finally, the parietal lobe helps to register spatial location, direct attention, and maintain motor control. Deeper in the brain, beneath the cortex, lie other key structures. These include the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, as well as the amygdala, which plays an important role in emotions, and the hippocampus, which is especially active in memory and emotion. On this slide, you will see neurons, the picture of a neuron. Now, what is a neuron? Neurons are nerve cells that process information. An axon sends electrical signals away from the central part of the neuron. At the end of the axons are terminal buttons, which release chemicals called neurotransmitters into the synapse. Now, synapses are tiny gaps between neurofibers. Chemical interactions in synapses connect axons and dendrites, allowing information to pass from neuron to neuron. Most axons are covered by a myelin sheath, which is a layer of fat cells. This sheath helps impulses travel faster along the neuron, increasing the speed with which information travels from neuron to neuron. The myelin sheath developed as the brain evolved. Clusters of neurons, known as neural circuits, work together to handle particular types of information. The brain is organized in many neural circuits. For example, one neural circuit is important in attention and working memory. This neural circuit uses the neurotransmitter dopamine and lies in the prefrontal cortex and midbrain areas of the brain. Now, how does the brain develop in infancy? Brain development occurs extensively during the prenatal period. There is also a substantial development in infancy and later on. At birth, the newborn's brain is about 25% of its adult weight. By the second birthday, the brain is about 75% of its adult weight. Two key developments during these first 2 years involve the myelin sheath and connections between dendrites. Now, myelination is the process of encasing neurons with a myelin sheath, which begins prenatally and continues after birth. The myelin sheath ensures axons and helps electrical signals travel faster down the axon. Myelination increases the speed at which information is processed. It also is involved in providing energy to neurons and in communication. Myelination, for example, for visual pathways occurs rapidly after birth and is completed during the first 6 months. Auditory myelination is not completed until 4 or 5 years of age. If you look at this slide, you will realize that the myelination process increases as the child develops. So there is increase in dendrite and synapses, which are tiny gaps between the neurons, occurs across neurotransmitters. Nearly twice as many of these connections are made as will ever be used. These connections that are used become strengthened and survive. The unused ones are replaced by other pathways or disappear. That is, connections are pruned. Blooming and pruning vary considerably by brain region in humans. For example, the peak synaptic overproduction in the area concerned with vision occurs about the 4th postnatal month, followed by a gradual pruning until the middle to the end of the preschool years. In areas of the brain involved in hearing and language, a similar thought somewhat a similar occurs similarly somewhat later. However, the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain where higher level thinking and self-regulation occurs, the peak of overproduction occurs just after 3 years of age. Both heredity and environment are thought to influence synaptic overproduction and subsequent pruning. Changing structures. At birth, the hemispheres already have started to specialize. Newborns show greater electrical activity in the left hemisphere than in the right hemisphere when they are making or listening to speech sounds. In general, some areas of the brain, such as the primary motor areas, develop earlier than others. The frontal lobes are immature in the newborn. However, as neurons in the frontal lobe become myelinated and interconnected during the first year of life, infants develop the ability to regulate their physiological states, such as sleep, and gain more control over their reflexes. Cognitive skills that require thinking do not emerge until later in the first year. If you look at this picture, you will see how the myelination occurs across the years. For this module, this is the books that you will refer to. Santrock, Child Development. Thank you.